This AskReddit user asks, "What's the worst example of personal hygiene you've ever seen from someone?" This guy and his family didn't like to shower. And they all had food stains all over their clothing. And the father smelled like he crapped himself. Smelled like pee. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part is he had food stuck in his hair and maggots crawling in it. Literally, the guy smelled like death. He said I was being offensive because I stood 10 feet away from him. Guy had the nerve to call my manager over, who then immediately stuck his hand up and said he wasn't interested in hearing his story, that he needed to leave and not come back until he took a shower. After this is when he started taking care of himself. Edit. Sentence improvements. I am so glad he started taking care of himself. I hope the whole family followed that example and it was the beginning of better lives for everyone. And I am glad your manager had your back. I used to work retail, and one day we had this woman come into the store who had not showered in months. She stunk the whole store up from just walking around. We had to ask her to leave due to hygiene. I will never forget that stench. It was like low tide and a dead body had been sitting around for a month. Girl I was friends with at university had been complaining of an itchy head for a couple of weeks. We all joked it could have been head lice, but none of us had any contact with children. Anyway, this girl was known for her lack of showering. We worked in the same restaurant together and she'd frequently finish a shift, sleep in her uniform and go back the next day without even a pat down with a wet wipe, just to put it in context. One day in a lecture she scratched her head and a huge louse came out and walked across her paper. It was shocking, honestly. Later that day she's got delicate shampoo and a comb. I swear to God, each time she pulled the comb out of her hair you couldn't even see the teeth. It was just alive and moving with lice. Still one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. I mean, her head was literally crawling with lice. I felt this comment in my soul. I instinctively scratched my head. I can't read about lice without my head getting itchy. That was my exact reaction. I was disgusted and immediately combed my hair as well. Fresh comb, don't worry. And was lice-free. She couldn't figure out why everyone was so appalled. We had two regulars that used to come into our bar in their later years of life, but enjoyed the atmosphere and loved chatting up anyone who would listen. Things started going south a few years back when we started getting some complaints that they would sometimes smell like urine. Then it dawned on me, I hadn't seen either of them get up and go to a washroom. Eventually we came to find out that instead of acting like normal members of society, they would come in, drink beer for a few hours, and just casually PS themselves while wearing diapers and not think anyone would notice. They could have been incontinent from years of holding it in while they sat and drank. My mom's ex had a buddy who ended up like that because he felt like taking a PS killed his buzz. Started wearing adult diapers at like 42 or 43, he said. The only reason I know this is because we were on a road trip and he made a point of stopping to let me take a leak and explaining why I shouldn't hold it for any reason. Well, at least they were wearing diapers. My dad had the same issue, just that he doesn't use diapers and pisses himself or ends up PG anywhere. I have a girlfriend who thought that it was normal for guys to have dingleberries. Poor girl was going down on a guy with matted TD fur. Okay, this one out of all of them made me audibly gasp. WTF? We were talking about how shitty blowjobs were and little did we know hers were actually shitty. She had just married him. No. Woman was a heavy smoker, which can cause a lot of issues in itself. And bad beau, like she never showered. And the list goes on and on. But the worst thing was this nasty brown blouse she had that she wore all the time. I mean, like 4 days a week at least. But she did wear other things occasionally because they always jumped out. Thing is, there was a picture on her desk wearing that blouse from like 5, 6, whatever years before, and it was white in that picture. I just thought it was coincidence and no way it was the same one till one of her coworkers who shared the office with her started BG about her one day when she was gone. And the woman confirmed it was the same shirt. And she had slowly watched it change from white to whatever disgusting it currently was over the years. My grandparents were heavy smokers. My granddad did quit eventually, but my nan smoked until she died. Anyway, I'm there with my mom and aunt clearing out the house, and they always had this yellow-green wallpaper. Start taking family pictures off the walls, and suddenly this lovely baby blue wallpaper is staring at us. My parents moved house in 1990 to a place where the previous owners had been very heavy smokers, but had recently quit. The wallpaper in the living room was a beige, almost a coffee latte color when they first went to view the property. On the day they got the keys, they were shocked. The previous occupants had taken their pictures, artwork and clock with them, and the spaces left behind on the wallpaper were quite a vivid shade of pink. And the contrast to the brown was astonishing. Yellow-green wallpaper. Suddenly this lovely baby blue wallpaper. I bought a car with a brown interior from a smoker. The car smelled like an ashtray despite soaking it with air freshener. I decide to scrub the interior. Turns out the interior was light beige. I hate to think what happened to their lungs. A guy we called the stink beast. I was a rent-to-own delivery guy right out of college. We had a regular customer that smelled like a sock stuffed with boiled cabbage and soaked in diarrhea. All the time. He also only wore tank tops. I went to his nasty house to pick up a stereo he couldn't pay for. I spent 20 minutes in his house unhooking wires, etc. There was dog ST on the couch. Next to me in more than one spot. And I mean actual turds. Not a smear of something. I rolled the stereo out on a dolly through several more piles of ST and loaded the stereo into the van. As I'm ready to close the door, he runs out with a wad of cash and wants me to put it back. While I'm writing up a new ticket, he leans in to adjust something on the stereo. His sweaty, hairy pit jams right into my face. It was like getting hit in the face with a used diaper. I immediately whirled around and puked in his yard, while I'm trying to be nice and pretend I'm getting the flu. His dog proceeds to come over and eat my puke. So yeah, this guy. I literally just exclaimed aloud. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. This is FFS. I want to throw up now. I had a part-time job at uni cleaning out student rooms after the occupants had moved out. One room was left with no fewer than 28 bottles of PS that the occupant had decided just to leave in the room. The shared bathroom was next door. I lived next door to an apartment for Mormon missionaries. One of the guys saved all of his PS in 3-liter bottles. He and the other guy got in trouble when they went to their weekly meeting and distributed bottles of PS to other missionaries as if they were filled with soda. They told me about this, but could not explain why. 1. They saved PS in bottles, and 2. Why they gave it to other missionaries. I peed in a lemonade container in middle school so I could get some weird middle school clout. But without a plan, I panicked and stuffed it in my locker. I was so paranoid about taking it out and getting caught that I just left it in there, and since it was a little buried under unused binders, I pretty much forgot about it until cleaning my locker for the year. Middle school was too strange of a time for me. Reminds me of my brother's college freshman year roommate. The dude was insufferable for a lot of reasons, but one of the things he would do was PS in bottles and leave them in the room even though the bathroom was next door. The dude ended up leaving midway through the year and his parents came to get him. The guy had left a bottle of PS on his desk that brother had asked him to take care of days earlier. So after the dude had mostly packed and he and his parents left for a little while, my brother very slightly unscrewed the top so that it would leak and put it in the middle of all this guy's stuff in his bag. A classic form of petty revenge. While in Manhattan, found a homeless guy unconscious in an alley with maggots coming out of his mouth. Told a cop on the corner. Dude, that sounds a bit more than just unconscious. It actually happens. A Wikipedia rabbit hole led me to reading up on this at one point, and boy, I wish I hadn't seen the pictures. I still vividly remember this. Apparently in non-tropical areas it happens with a combination of no dental hygiene. Dead, rotting tissue in mouth. Plus often drugs drying out the mouth letting the maggots hatch. It's called myiasis if you'd like to not get any sleep tonight. I can tell you my assie's not Googling that anytime soon. I'm a nurse, so I've seen some ST. But the worst would be a woman with scabies and fleas. I don't know how she got them. But she was so ashamed of having them that she basically just barricaded herself at home for some weeks. Until her daughter got her admitted to the hospital. I'm not exaggerating when I say that everything on her jumped when you came close to her bed or she moved. She had them everywhere, and I mean everywhere. I spare you the description of her intimate area. My aunt is a nurse and she had some stories. One that stuck out was a large obese woman came in. And they had to bathe her. My aunt said she lifted up one of her BS only to be greeted by live maggots. I am going away now. Goodbye. I had a science teacher who used to work as a nurse, and he would refer to those people as yeast y beast ies. Because they would have literal yeast cultures forming under their fat rolls. I work in in a low-income area. There was one that I'll never forget. She was a mid-40s obese hoarder who had decided it wasn't worth the effort to get out of her recliner for 2 weeks straight. She had a fridge within reach, so she wasn't hungry but was producing feces and urine the entire time without getting up to use the restroom or to clean herself. You could smell her down the hall with the door closed, and her behind was literally rotting away with pressure sores down to her bones. But how can you stand that? Probably nerve damage, and she had slowly desensitized herself to being in that situation by building up behavior. I believe in this case she had some severe depression as well, which definitely could have contributed. This reminds me of a man I met on my psych placement. Except he was basically the opposite. He was so depressed he couldn't get up. Difference is he couldn't reach any food or water, so just stayed there until he became dehydrated and developed an AKI. It's the only time I've seen emergency ECT used. Once he was medically fit. And the improvement in his mental state was phenomenal. I worked at an engine assembly plant in NY State where everyone is in these 3 to 5 station teams that rotate every hour so you don't go crazy doing the same job for 8+ hours. We had this dude who came to our group who had the nastiest teeth I've ever seen in my life. His bottom front teeth were all fused together into one big lower tusk, and his breath could gag a maggot. It got so difficult to work with the guy. You could smell his breath from at least 6 feet away. That we had to go to a manager to figure out how to handle it and not be dicks. Well, they basically told him he needed to do something about it. So he constantly had a tub of mints on him. After that, his breath just smelled like a rotting corpse and mint. So, yay. As someone who has been through this earlier in my life, I beg you to go easy on people who have the rotting smell on their breath. Because there is no hiding it. It is their teeth you smell rotting. I spent most of my teenage years homeless and without insurance until I was 25. My teeth started falling apart when I was 14. Apparently my adult teeth came in with very weak enamel, and I was always told it would take a lot of visits to keep them in good health. By the time I had insurance, it was so bad that the $2,000 per year plans everyone has would not cover anything resembling a helpful solution. Even just getting dentures plus pulling the bad teeth was going to be $12,000 and up. I was embarrassed all the time. I spoke to no one unless I was 10+ feet away. Never looked anyone in the eye and never smiled even when I had a reason to. In the end, all my teeth needed replacing. But specifically, all my molars had rotted down to below the gum line, and I learned to chew soft food with my tongue. So I get it. Bad breath is bad. But try to see it from their point of view. Rotting teeth suck. And unless you have a plan without a yearly limit, which barely exists these days, it is hard to do anything about it. Mine was out of my control. I brushed and flossed daily as I was supposed to, and they still fell apart. My first tooth crumbled while I was eating mac and cheese, which is not strong enough to break a tooth. Man, the costs of dental are insane. It's not a BB job. It's basic human health. Teeth are luxury bones. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos.